This is what the end result for mine looks like. Obviously, yours is going to look different. Open with PLC. Hold on to make sure audio works. This is the text animators.
Oh, text, yeah. We're using our fancy title, some of our page transitions, and our text animators.
Yep. And you can see how it's flowing from one piece to the next piece to the next piece. There's nothing abrupt about it. There's always some sort of transition, so we're not just like jostled. It's really loud. You don't need to. Why wouldn't you want it? Even at the end, right? The last one is the difference here from the other ones is we have two things that we're going to deal with. Number one, how do we bring artwork from Illustrator so that we can actually animate it separately? And then the other one I'll show once I bring it in, okay? I'm not going to show every bit of that because everything else is pretty much the same. So here is my artwork that I've drawn. This box here represents the 1280 by 720. Everything's on layers. Everything is labeled correctly. When I come into After Effects, I'm going to go and find my artwork. Text animators, artwork, Angry Bird opener. Now I'm going to single click it. This is the way we've done it before. If we brought anything from Illustrator, just hit import. It brings in a flattened out version of it. You want to click this, composition, retain layer sizes. What that will do is it'll bring in the composition, or every layer from Illustrator and make a composition, okay? So then we can hit import, and now we have this, which is our Angry Bird opener composition. I double click it, and here's all the layers from Illustrator, okay? Now, we do have to fix one more thing. I'm going to grab one of my clouds and move it, and you'll see the problem that we have there is this. They're cut off. So my artboard stops right here, so it's automatically going to cut off that area. We can fix this two different ways. One of the ways we can fix it is by clicking on this button. This is continuously rasterize, and what it's going to do is it's going to, typically, it ignores the artboard. In this case, it doesn't want to do that, so we're not going to do it that way. Come on, there we go. The other way I'm going to do it is jump back to Illustrator. I'm going to click on my artboard button and then just drag this artboard so that it does encompass all the stuff. And then hit enter, oops, not enter, hit save. And now when I go back here and I drag this up, you'll see that it does fit the full cloud, okay? Now, there's a reason that I did this, I imported it first, is because I wanted to make sure that it maintained my 1280 by 720. Had I not, it would have brought it in at a bigger size, okay? So I always do it that way. So from this point, it's just animating all the elements. How do I want this thing to flow from start to the end? The text that's right here is going to have to be copy-pasted from the other one, just like before. So we'll copy-paste. There we go. Copy this piece of text. Click on my text tool, paste it, and then drag this into the appropriate spot, and then animate it however I'm going to animate it, okay? Same thing for press start, same thing for that stuff. Each one of my clouds I would animate separately. My background right here, I didn't leave this as a straight background. I added a gradient, and then gave it some more cheerier colors. That's good. And swap the colors, there we go. And if I wanted to animate, in my case, I animated the sky kind of coming into scene. So I actually took that layer and I just scaled it up. Okay, that way I'm starting off at white, which is what I'm going to do. This is actually going to be pure white. My background here, I'm going to put in a new solid. And that will be white. And that's on the bottom. And so now when I animate this sky coming in, it's going to look like it's fading from blue, or from white to blue. Okay? So that's an easy way to do something like that. We can go bigger and just kind of utilize that whole space. Everything else is just animating it the same way. Positions, rotations, scales, whatever. My press start that I did, turn the audio off. Okay, so we'll break this down so we can see it. So, just like I showed, I have the clouds coming in. The clouds are kind of bobbing up and down. My angry bird comes into frame. The style of the text here is just using layer styles. So I did like a stroke on it, and then I did a drop shadow and a bevel emboss, I believe, on this to make it feel a little bit more 3D. This just moves up, and then my press start is the same way that I did the other one in the last one where I animated that keyframes looping, okay? Now, the difference, though, is that it starts off at 0, and then it's going to get brighter, and then it's going to dim, but it doesn't dim all the way. In the last one, that cursor, that went all the way transparent to all the way, 50% opaque or whatever. So, let me copy and paste my press start. Text there, paste. I'm just going to throw it here just so we can focus on just that. So this starts off at 0. I'm going to scooch up to, let's say, 2 seconds. Go to 100. I'm going to scooch up to 3 seconds. Go down to like 50%. Okay, and now this is where I want to loop, but I only want to loop those last 2 frames, those last 2 keyframes. If I alt-click on this and do the same thing I did before, loop out, and let's say I just did ping pong, that's what we did before, and then we did comma 0, and then clicked off of it. What we're going to get is we're going to get this, where it goes all the way off, then comes back on again. Okay, we don't want that. So I'm going to do ping pong, but I'm going to change this number here. This number is basically how far back do you want this to loop. So if I put it at 0, it's going to loop basically the entire thing. 0 typically is a default for just do the whole thing. If I put 1, it'll do the last keyframe and the one before it, and it'll just ping pong between just those 2. So I can click that off, and now what we should get is it's going to fade up from, rewind it, fade up from nothing, and then start going and blinking on and off, or just kind of fading in and out like that. Okay, and again, I could adjust these positions, right, and change how that's happening. If I set this to 2, what do you think it's going to do?
Just only play the last one?
So think of it like this one's automatic, and then when I do 1, it's going to go back 1 keyframe. So it'll loop these.
Go back 2 keyframes.
2 keyframes. So it'll do the exact same thing that 0 did. Okay, so it's actually going to go back to nothing and then come back. Okay, so that can be helpful because you might have an animation where you have 3, 4, 5 keyframes and you just want to loop those last 3, 4, or 5 and not the rest of them at the beginning of it, right? I have a character who kind of comes into frame and then hits a spot and then just kind of bounces up and down. I could have that. My clouds were done the same way. I animated the clouds kind of coming up, and then I have them kind of just floating there. So I did the same thing where it's up here and then down there, and then it loops. Mm-hmm.
So can you start with the looping and then can you end it at some point?
Yes, you can. So you can do this. If I scoot this over here, instead of going loop out, let's say I did loop in. And so now what it's going to do is all the looping should happen at the beginning of this. We're not seeing that, so let's go to 0. Why aren't you playing nice? Let's try that again. Loop in. We'll just try a cycle this time, maybe just loop like that. It's changing. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. There we go. Let's try that again. It's changing. It's not doing anything. So put that back to ping pong. Put this here. Put that at 0. And then set that to 1. There we go. Okay. So now it's going to do this because 1 is that keyframe. And then what's going to happen when it gets here is that it's going to fade all the way to 0 or fade all the way up to bright and then stay at half brightness, right? So you can do a loop in, you can do a loop out. If it's something more complex, typically what I'll do is I'll duplicate the layer and just have this one do this animation, this one do this other one. Okay. So that's how, for animation purposes, that's all I did with this one. That's literally all I did. My rainbow, I just put the pivot down here, which is stuff we've already done before. Found the right spot, and then I just rotated this into frame. Okay, that's not the right spot. That looks horrible. The right spot is a bit further down probably. Yep, closer. Okay. Don't rely on just how I'm doing something as how you should do it. Rely on your skills. Rely on you have 15 different tools. If I have a toolbox full of screwdrivers, you don't need to grab the exact screwdriver I used. Typically anything will work. Even if you're hammering in a nail, a screwdriver could work. It may not be the best tool, but it definitely could work. Another way I could have done the rainbow is I could have drawn just a path on here, like that. It got rid of my fill, taken this up to a crazy amount, and then just added a trim path and used that as a clipping mask. Right? So that. And then scoochy up, that. Come on, get down there, right there. Okay, and then there's my rainbow, and then I set this to be a mask. So now it's going to, there it goes. And that's actually a bit smoother than trying to rotate it in a position. The other thing I could have done, I could have actually broken up the color band and had the whole color band animate individually, like each piece. That could have been something else, okay? So once I'm done with this, this is what it looked like. Right, so I animated each individual letter coming up, just like the text animators. And then I animated the other pieces just straight on position and opacity. And then I did add a sound effect. I think it cut off. Go ahead.
When you showed the video, like it said loading interface sequence, do we do that one? Or
That's the hologram one.
Yeah, no, but like when we turn in our stuff, do we do that one, the loading?
You'll have all three.
All three?
Yep. You'll have the quote, you'll have the hologram interface opener, and then you'll have the Angry Bird opener.
Yeah, no, but like we used the one that you had showed us, that one right there?
Yep.
Oh, okay, I thought we had to make like the actual interface.
The actual hologram? No, not yet.
Oh.
That's the next assignment. Next week we're starting that.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I thought I had to do another hologram all over again.
Right. No, this, well, this one here, this is just text. That's all we're focusing on. Next week we'll do the hologram. That's where we're going to do the more complex one. If you do have some hologram stuff here, that's fine. You might have like a semi-interface loading as it's going. So this is actually 2 sound effects going. This is really annoying how After Effects likes to take over everything. Audio hardware. I have to redirect my audio to my headphones. There we go. Yes. Okay. Jeez. Good morning. All right. So here's the 2 sound effects. One of them is like an iMac loading, and then the other one is a computer sound. So I like that one because it kind of matches the letters coming up. And then I like this one because it just feels a little warmer. It would, but I didn't want to spend that much time on this. Cool. So once I have all that stuff set up, then I have to go through and start put all my stuff together. I go into my page transitions. I'm going to import. I can import those. I go to my title card, I'm going to import those. So I'm going to double click, find my stuff, title card fancy, there's my title card, import the project, boom, and then it'll import. I already did it, so I don't need to do that again. It's right here. Here's my title card fancy. I've already updated my stuff so that it says the appropriate things. It says 04, it says text animators. A little bit of a wobble right there. I need to get rid of that. 04, position. I'm going to right click on this keyframe and toggle a hold keyframe so it doesn't wiggle. There we go. All right, and then I'm going to grab these in the order. So I'm ignoring my page transitions right now. All I'm going to do is grab my title card fancy, go into my compositions, and then control click these in the order I want these to show up. So my quote, my hologram, and then my Angry Bird. Drag all this onto a new composition, single comp, sequence layers, hit OK. Everything should be the same size. Everything should be 1280 by 720 at 24 frames a second. Okay. Now here's where it looks horrible because I have rough transitions. There's, well, no transition really, just kind of blips. It just goes away, and then the other one pops onto screen. And then the same thing here at the end of this, it pops away, and then the other one comes onto screen. Okay, and then the end of this, well, this one actually disappears way over here, and then there's nothing, and then it does that. Okay, so transitions is where these would come in. Now, again, you can import your transitions. I found it easier just to remake transitions, okay? They don't have to be complex. I just made new ones. So here is this fancy title card final, hologram final. Where is it? Number 3? No. Number 2? Yep, there it is. Okay. So I'm going to copy this. Go to that. And paste it, and then drag this over. Okay, so here is my quick transition. It's just going to go from beige to blue. That's all it does. There's literally nothing fancy there, just one color to the next color. And I followed it with, this one already goes away, right? So I need to get somehow to get that beige on there. So for this one, realistically, I could just ignore the blue and just use the beige, and that way the beige will wipe on, it'll wipe off, and then right behind it will be that beige color, okay? So I need to do some overlap. So here's where my other one ends. Okay, and then this disappears like so. So that's where this one's going to start. Okay, once it covers the entire screen, okay, you can see there's a frame here where there's like a little blip where you can see the other one coming in. That's a no-no. So I'm going to scoot this one away, wait for it to cover the entire screen. There we go. And then I'll drag this one in to start. That way, when it goes away, the other one's sitting right underneath it. I'm going to go to the keyframes here and just adjust these. I'm going to squeeze these in a little bit further just so the transition doesn't take too long. So it slides in and then slides out, and then you can see that's a nice transition from nothing, covers it, and then the same color. Okay, it's just one thing. You don't need to do a full-blown, super complex one. You can do it just like that. As long as there's a smooth transition between each piece, that's what works. I'm also going to just cut that. Okay. Now, the next thing I need to make sure of is that I don't have, I do have good timing and good pacing from piece to piece. So here, let's just watch this area. So beginning, end, there we go. So what's wrong with it? It's too long of a nothing, right? Too long of just that still. So I need to go into that composition, move stuff around so that it syncs up a lot better. So then I'm going to jump into my Dolly Parton quote. I'm going to look at all my keyframes, and if I just drag the keyframes over, this little ticker right here is actually it carries it from the previous comp. So when I'm in here and I have this lined up there, and then I double click this, it's saying that's where you're at. So that way I can say this is where I want the text to start, double click it, and then that's where it's going to happen. So I'm going to go back in here. And I want this to pretty much start up 2 frames after-ish of it being revealed. So there it's revealed. If I go up 2 frames, that's where the text should start. Okay, that way we don't get bored. So I come in here, slide that over, jump back to this composition, and then we should see that coming in pretty close to it. Okay. Now I can also kind of wiggle the animation inside here. This is just basically a still. There's nothing happening there. So if I decided I want my text to be on screen at this exact point, I can also just slide this over until I see the text and then back off a little bit. So now we'll look at it and we'll see this is going to look a lot better. It's going to flow from one piece to the next. Okay, much better timing. The second this one's done, something else comes on, then something else comes on. Okay, now this is 35 seconds. My animation is not 35 seconds. Okay, there's my little scripty one. You don't want to cut it off right away. Again, think about the timing, think about the pacing. You want to give the viewer a little bit of time to process what they just saw. So I'm going to copy that same transition. Again, I don't need to reinvent it. This isn't a page transitions assignment, but we're using them from now on to move from spot to spot. So I'm going to go in here and just line this up how I want this to be lined up. In this case, I'm going from a beige color to a blue color. So these 2 solids are beige and blue. So the first one I'm going to animate is the beige one. So I just want to make sure that this is lined up. And then I'm going to go into this one. And then if you remember from hopefully at least 2 weeks ago, or about 2 weeks ago, we should have some sort of stair-stepping in here. Okay, so this one's going to come on first, then this one goes away first, and then that one. Okay, so I can just kind of preview that. That's good. Maybe a little bit too much of a hold here. Whoops. So now swipe. Good. Okay, it gets us from one piece to the next. Now, I need to figure out where I want this transition to happen. So again, I want the text to be written out. Okay, this is about 12 seconds. I'm going to give the viewer a little bit of time. I'm ignoring what's happening on my comp. I'm just looking at my time right here. And I'm going to go, I don't know, 15 frames seems like a good amount. We'll see. I might need to adjust it. So about there seems good. That's when these are going to come onto screen. So I'm going to slide this here. I'm going to go to where the middle of this is. There we go. I'm going to cut the Dolly Parton quote off. And then I'm going to drag in my hologram. Now this one actually does have a transition at the beginning of it, so it will automatically, it'll just transition nicely. Right, so it kind of blends right there into that next transition. Right, and again, if it didn't, I would jump into the comp, I'd move my keyframes and layers over if I needed to get that to be lined up. Okay, here's the end of this one. It writes it out. I spent about a good half hour trying to find a good sound effect for computer screen writing, and just like yours, I couldn't find a free one. So I'm like, that's good enough. Good enough for my demo. If I'm putting this in my reel, definitely I would want that. When you do your hologram, you want those sound effects. So 2108 seems like a good amount of time. I'm going to again steal this. I'm going to paste it. Slide this over.
I think they get like royalty-free ones, but it's like MP3 because it's like from YouTube.
No, you can get them through Sound Bible and Sound Dogs, and there's several websites. It's just finding what I hear, what I know I want, and getting it on there.
Yeah, it's good.
Right. Some aren't good. I mean, you really got to like look for the specific ones. There was a couple that was like, it's kind of close. I could probably bring it into Audition and tweak it some.
It's like best if you make your own, but I don't feel like doing all that.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a whole job. That's someone's job is to build audio.
Yeah.
One of the companies we work with, I'm just going to talk while I'm doing this. They actually go out and they'll record environments, and they'll put audio in it. So they'll go around a stadium and they'll put microphones all around the stadium, and record the audio so that when you're like in a VR setup,
Oh, wow.
you can actually hear the audio as you would in the stadium. It's pretty cool. I'm going to go to my Angry Birds. I'm going to slide this in. Okay, and again, there might be a little bit of lag there where that's like too much wait time, so I'm going to slide this over so that it feels like I'm not waiting.
You think it'll work if you like adjust the brightness, like make it a little brighter throughout like the time?
What do you mean?
Like it's like really dark and then it automatically goes to bright.
Oh, you mean like from this to that? Yeah, right. So that'd be a good point, right? So let's do that. So let's take this and just duplicate that. And again, we don't want to drag it out, so I'm just going to slide this over. And here's my dark. So let's go into this. Let's go to my brightness, and we'll take this about halfway up, and then we'll desaturate it a bit. And then we'll go to the next one. Oops. We'll go to the next one. Click that. Take the brightness up a bit more. Take the saturation down a bit more. So now, again, we're perfect. We're transitioning from one to the other. We don't want to jostle people. We'll look at our keyframes. Slide these right in. And then we'll adjust our stairs. Whoops. Right, so now we're transitioning it from dark to light. Nope, let's just get rid of these other ones. So once that's covered, let's just cover that up and cut this off. There we go. So now we go from dark to light, and then right into it. Okay, cool. And then the same thing here. Here's my Angry Birds. There's that. Okay, that's where everything's on screen. Again, give it some time. And then I'm just going to go copy this, paste it, slide that down. Wait for it to be covered, and then cut that off. And I could, again, transition that into a...
So that's the last thing they show?
Yep.
Yeah, we got
Okay, so now I'm going to adjust my work area. You'll see this composition came in at 37 seconds, but because I've cut it, cropped it, shrunk it, adjusted things, it's a lot shorter. We don't want to render this out and have all of that blank space. It's a waste of space. All right, so I preview this again, hit play, let it go through, add my audio, whatever. That's good. I'm going to drop these into my compositions to keep everything organized. I'm going to save this. And then I would go ahead and export it and, oops, click there. And export it, add it to the render queue. I'm not going to hit the render button because it'll take a minute, but same settings as before, QuickTime, Apple ProRes 422. My audio I've checked, 44.1 is where my level is at. If I look at the audio I have here, sound, 44.100 here, and I believe this one is also 44.100. So that's what those are. That's what I want to export my audio out at. When I give this a name, call it your name, what the assignment is. Don't put too much thought into it, because you'll probably screw it up if you do. Your name, what the assignment is. And then you hit render, and then boom. When you have that ready to go, there we go. Notice how everything here is nice and organized. I can see here's the artwork folder, there's the final folder, here's the sound folder, there's the compositions. You'll most likely have one composition, you won't have three of them. After Effects will use this folder. We don't need that folder, you can trash that folder, okay? Notice how my name is also on this folder. Once everything's set, I copy it, I go to the Z drive, 1900, turn in, and then I would drop that inside here. Questions on it? That wraps it up. No? Cool.